All right, from the Susan Fairfax City, we are very grateful that Ann Sweeten accepted the invitation to our show. And welcome to my humble podcast.
Nice to be here, Claudio.
No problem. Let's go back to the beginning of your life. Were you born like in a musical family? I mean, did your parents put you in piano lesson or guitar lesson, or your parents have maybe a lot of records of music in the house that you were listening when you were a little girl at home?
Well, my mother was a singer, not a professional. She could have been, but she was. And my grandmother was a pianist, again, not professional, but it was in the family. My uncle was a singer too, but not professionally, but could have been. It was a different time. And but my mother loved Broadway and she played musical scores all the time in the house. And as a toddler, I would dance in front of the stereo and I just loved it. And I wasn't pushed into any lessons. Because I danced in front of the stereo, my mother gave me ballet lessons at 5. And then at age 6, I said I didn't want to go anymore. So we didn't do ballet lessons. And then I expressed an interest in a keyboard because I had been visiting my cousin and she had this little toy keyboard
Mm.
and I loved playing with it. And when I got home, I said, could I get one of those? And for my 6th Christmas, I received a Hammond organ. And my mother was always looking for anything that her daughter might, you know, like to do or express an interest in that she could support and
Mm.
develop, but only if I was interested. And, she never pushed the ballet, but after my interest in music, the next year I said, I want to go back to ballet. So I went back to ballet when I was 7, and continued with that. But I think it's very important for a parent to be supportive and offer the opportunity if at all possible. But if you push, that's the wrong thing. If you
Mm.
beat a child into practicing, they're going to rebel and not want to do it. So
That's
anyway,
good.
I got this Hammond organ and I started playing that day. I put these little back then they had these little things you put in the keys to ID them and the little books that match the keys. So it was easy to follow along. But I just took to it like a duck to water and I couldn't reach the pedals. So I stood for the first year. My mother got me, a teacher right away. And off I went. And after 3 years of organ, my teacher told my mother, if you want her to develop technically, to get these hands, beefed up and to really begin to excel, she has the music in her, you need an acoustic instrument. So on my 9th Christmas, my mother gave me the Baldwin piano. And that's the beginning of that. And I loved it. I loved music. And then I continued to love dance. And the two were side by side for many, many, many years, all throughout high school.
Yeah, I got you. And then, so good for you. That your parents were able to help you. That a lot of kids out there, they don't have the possibilities to learn music, and then so it wasn't hard for you to, because you eventually start taking piano lessons and have like a formal education music and learn. I imagine that, I don't know, Liszt, Chopin, Beethoven, and many of the
All of the above.
masters, all the above, right? And and practice, practice, practice. And people like me, they don't want to practice. I'm a rebel person, so I'm a rebellious person.
Well, I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel too, but not for what I love. I mean, for what I love, I embrace
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And so, how many hours were you practicing at the time?
Well, I had quite a a bit of a grueling schedule through high school. I mean, I would get up around 5 a.m. and I'd do my first hour of practice, have
Yeah.
breakfast, go to school, come home, have dinner, practice another hour. And then there were about 3 days a week that I went to ballet. And those days, after finishing school, my mother would pick me up, take me to ballet, which was another state away. That was at least an hour and a half of class, then home, then dinner, then homework, and if there was time, another hour on the piano. Um, so that was pretty much high school. And I loved it all, though. I was excused from all sports. My mother argued, like, how can she play sports when she's already doing so much more than any sport could require when she's in ballet training for, all this time. And they excused me finally. So, then I didn't have to have that obligation and I was free to do that PE obligation the way I wanted.
And then I imagine that, eventually you finish high school, right? And then eh, you needed to make a decision about kind of music or go to school or, any pressure for your family or they were supportive to whatever decision you
Oh,
wanted to make.
well, Claudio, is that the right pronunciation,
Yeah,
Claudio?
Claudio. Yes, it's absolutely.
Claudio. Okay.
Claudio, yeah.
It's a very, very sensitive time in my life. My mother died very shortly after I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
My parents were divorced,
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
so it was just the two of us. And I was 18 when she died, and I was already slated to go off to college, to Smith College in Western Massachusetts. And I mean, I was devastated because not only was she my mother, but she was my best friend. I mean, she was the one who got me those instruments. She was the one who took me to my lessons. She was the one who supported me, believed in me. And her loss was and still is the greatest loss of my life. But I went to college and I struggled. I just didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to recover from the grief, and it took a while, a really long while. And in college, I had a different piano teacher who I did not like. He did the very opposite of what David Sokoloff did. And David had told me, don't let anyone straitjacket your musicality and your passion. That's beautiful and it can't be taught. And this is what this man tried to do to me. He tried to take me from already playing Grieg and Liszt and Beethoven and everything down to the most rudimentary kindergarten, if you will, type pieces. And I was horrified. But he kept telling me that I was bending rhythms and I wasn't supposed to do that. And he said, you have to play to a metronome. And I hate metronomes. And in my music today, I bend rhythms and I challenge traditional, classical mind frame and structure. Because I actually believe that all those guys, and there weren't any gals that I know of back then, of the great masters, I don't believe that they were writing I think they were writing and playing, and then somebody decided to put it down the way they wanted it. And so, because if you write something, you write it the way you feel it. And I think they ultimately, expected everyone to play more metronomically, if you will, as opposed to emotionally and passionately. And I know as a composer that when I play something, I'm going to play it passionately. I'm not going to have a regard to meter. This is sweeping me off my feet, and then I'm going to pull it back a little bit, and then I'm going to, so anyway, I had a very difficult time with the music professor. My major ended up being in languages. I went off to Paris and continued studies my junior year abroad at Smith, but there was no support network anymore. My mother was gone, and my father kept a loose eye on me, and I was kind of just trying to find my way. And then I graduated, and I did not know what I was going to do. Music was paramount still. I played all the time. And, somewhere around my first year in an apartment in Boston, I was like, I think I want to be in a rock band. So that was the first segue there.
Yeah. And so how did it go with the rock band to begin with?
It was fun. The first tryout was with a cover band, and we were together for about 6 months. But then after that, that wasn't really going anywhere. And I found a guy, and we were like, we realized we could do something original, something more cutting edge. And it was the 80s, and he wrote the music. I liked what he was writing. I wrote all the melodies and the lyrics. I took his melodies or developed the melody into a lyric, and I was the female front. There were 5 of us. Let's see, 2 guitars, bass, and drums, and me. And we were Fallout, and it was the anti-nuke kind of movement back then. And we had some fun. It was great, but I think ultimately I wasn't meant for that world long term, and I left the band, kind of a mutual agreement, and I went to the Boston Conservatory for grad work, and kind of got into musical theater big time, because I'd had experience in musical theater, because my ballet troupe was often summoned by some of the local musical theater groups to choreograph the choral dances. So I had already had that experience, and I had done Brigadoon and some other things. And so I was like, yeah, that would be great. I sing, I dance, and why don't I go into musical theater then? So, and I was singing opera too. So I just many, many avenues of my life. And I did musical theater for quite a while. And then, the music, for a while I had both on the back burner, and then music took the forefront.
Good for you. A sort of personal question. How can I ask this question? No, I would ask anyways. Is it difficult? It was difficult, or it is difficult nowadays to be a female musician on the male-dominated world, and you're trying to, make room for yourself and that sort of thing?
Well, we are in the Me Too generation, so. But when I started out, it wasn't the Me Too generation. Claudio, I've always been my own person. Okay. I don't, yes, I'm a woman, but I don't go into the world thinking, oh, I'm a woman, he's a guy. I mean, I have a very strong sense of myself and purpose. And I do believe, you said you're Catholic, right?
Correct.
But
yeah.
I mean, I'm not, firmly religious, but I am so tuned into what I believe is a higher power. And I know I feel guidance. I feel guidance from above, if you want to say above, or where, from my mother, from people in my life that have cared about me, but aren't exactly, in the present realm, but maybe they're on a parallel road and they see me and they're trying to send me messages, because I pick up on these things, and it can be in the tiniest little details, and it's just, I see it and I just get this huge smile on my face, and I'm like, you're trying to talk to me, aren't you? You're telling me it's going to be okay. And I've held on to those things and I believe in it. And maybe I'm a fool, but I believe in it.
I don't.
So I,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. You're not a
but,
fool.
but, but I don't believe, yes, it's male dominated. It always has been, but it's changing. But I have never found that to be a blockade for me.
Got it. Yeah, good for you. Yeah. I it's funny that you mentioned that you have sensed your mother or your guardian angel or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. But I don't want to get into today about this kind of stuff. But I have seen the other side, if you will, and what you say
Yeah,
is absolutely correct.
exactly.
So it's amazing, right? So the
You
way
know,
that we.
it's there are so many messages coming in if you know how to listen.
That's
And the
right.
problem is so many people don't know how to listen. They're
Yeah.
so busy with their phones and their computers and they just
Yeah.
it's too much information coming in. They don't just absorb what is naturally there. I mean, you can sit in a garden and a little hummingbird will come in at just the right time and you'll be like, oh, someone just spoke to me. Or a butterfly, a
Absolutely.
monarch, I mean, it just, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I completely agree with you, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Around 1989, you end up writing your first y- or yeah, around that time, your first piece, right? That right? So I think it's the first album with Prison.
I started composing, yes.
Yeah.
It took a while for, me to get to a point where I would release it, but there's a big story about that if you want to hear it.
Of course, that's what
Okay.
we're here
Well,
about.
in 89, I was, in the middle of my musical theater career, and I was also towards the mid to fall part of 89, heading into a possible separation with my then husband. And, I never expected anything like that to happen. And while I have always played, in musical theater, I taught myself my own pieces because I could read music, I could play the music, I didn't have to be taught. So many of my other colleagues, they needed to have someone help them learn the music because they either couldn't read the music, they couldn't play the music, and uh, whatnot. So I was always doing that. I was doing my own vocalese, with scales and warming my voice up, all of those kinds of things. Um, but I wasn't really, there wasn't time to compose because I was playing other roles, learning other roles. But in 89, when this happened, I started turning up my piano for solace and trying to figure out what was going on with me, with our relationship, and what was happening to me that was making things different. It was saw on me. I was kind of changing or hadn't become who I was in the first place because of, the loss of a mother at a very early age. And so I was writing. And then I had a contract on Block Island, Rhode Island, and an acting contract. And then I went back in 90, the second year, for a second contract. And I met a man out there. And at that point, my husband and I were separated. And this new guy that ended up becoming my second husband and I went to a hotel. Not what you think. They had a piano there and place was empty. It was probably a Monday night and I started sitting there playing the piano and I played something and he was just like, what is that? And I said, oh, composition of the moment. And he said, no, what is it? I said, just what I said. So are you serious? I said, yeah, I just played it. Just came out. He goes, do you have other stuff like that? And I said, yeah, got a fair amount now. I've been writing for a couple years. And he said, you need to record that. He said, more beautiful than anything that I listen to in that kind of genre. And I said, oh, come on, I'm an actress. I don't have a business degree. What in the world would I even do with it if I did? He said, it's not the point. Have you ever seen the movie Field of Dreams?
Of course. Yeah. With Kevin Costner, right? So yeah.
Yes, if you build it, they will
Will
come.
come. That's right.
And
Yeah.
that's what he said. And so I said, well, okay. So it took me a number of years to find the right studio that got me and that I felt comfortable with. And, and kind of decide how I wanted to tweak what I had written, because they were kind of more in the realm of musical theater. They all had lyrics and stuff. So I had to kind of tone that down and make it more new agey, if you will, back then. And so I guess it was 95, maybe it was that we found the studio, and maybe 97 was the first release of Prism, and that was the debut. But it was really Randy Yoder, my current husband and forever husband. He just believed in me, and he heard that, and he just said, you've got to go for this. And even when I just was just like, really?
So you end up good for you. Good story. And I'm glad that you met a good guy and help you out and rediscover you, and you start putting your music out there. So you end up releasing the first record. What was the next step? I mean, at the time, 89, that was before the internet, right? So you end up, I imagine you create like a cassette at the time, I think, or a CD later. You start sending that to radio, so you start showing your music around,
Well,
playing
it's
piano in some
interesting.
places.
The first couple of albums uh, would have been 96, 7, and 8, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the net was just beginning then, but my husband actually knew a radio host, a local radio host, which is pretty big deal here. It was called, at the time, was called W. Bach. And he just, you know, gave her a copy of a couple of my CDs at that point. I think I had 2 out. And, she took them and she listened to them and she was quite surprised. And they started playing them. And that was kind of the beginning. And then, back then it was the brick and mortars, everybody was going to physical places to buy and listen to CDs. And I got on the listening posts at Borders Books and Music, Sam Goody's, Tower. Locally at first, I basically shopped them there. I went from door to door and said, would you play these? And then I did a few in-store mini concerts on a Kurzweil synthesizer, which is a really nice synthesizer, but still a synthesizer. And, the response was incredible. So not too long after, Borders said, we want to take your third album and put it on, our listening posts across, the nation. And I was thrilled. It was quite the coup, because I had been, shopping a few branches, trying to, show them that what sales could be. And when they got enough information about that and saw that, they said, yeah, this, we're gonna bite. So they took it on. And actually what was really odd is that my third album, Reflections, came out right about the time what was on the listening posts already, but 9/11 happened. And it was almost like it happened, the nation was in turmoil, and all of a sudden it was flying off the listening posts, because people needed some sense of solace after such a horrific event. And that was kind of probably the really, really first impetus of what then was to come.
Oh, good for you, man. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you didn't give up and that you
No,
met a guy that could help you out. And
I never give up. I never give up. I'm a trooper. I'm a fighter. I've been through so much in my life. It's just, I wouldn't know how to do any otherwise.
that's right. All right. So we're talking about 9/11, and then so the sales start picking up. You were going to a particular record label or self-releasing. What were you doing at the time?
Well, no, I'm my own record label.
On your own,
I
right?
I devised my own record label, and that was a process too of deciding what to call it. And there's always meaning behind everything I do, so there's a
Yeah.
big meaning behind my label name, and I've always been on it. And it's I don't know if you want to know about the story behind that, but
Yeah, go for it.
okay. Are you familiar with the movie Bridges Over Madison County
Yeah, of course.
by Robert J. Waller,
Yeah.
the
Uh,
the
yeah,
writer?
yeah, with Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood and Meryl
No,
Streep.
Meryl Streep, right? Yeah, of course,
Yes.
I know the movie very well.
Well, he also wrote several other things, and one of them was a collection of, I guess you called them short stories or essays, but he titled it Songs from an Old Cafe. And within that is a piece called My Name is Orange Band. And I don't think I knew about Robert Waller and the movie or anything. But early on, I'm a big animal activist, so I would get these Humane Society magazines and things like this. And within that was an article, and it was called My Name is Orange Band. It was by Robert J. Waller. And I read it, was moved to tears. I was just like, oh my God, this man is amazing. He speaks to my heart. He was talking about this little sparrow, a dusky seaside sparrow. They had them in Florida, and it's about how the species dies out because everything that mankind does to the environment, and they lost their habitat, and they gathered the last five they could find, put them in probably a zoological sanctuary, and one by one they died out. There were no females to continue the species, and then finally this last little, and they had them banded, as they do with Audubon and those types of places, so they can keep an eye on them and just track them in the wild. But they did that. I guess they gave them a number or whatever. I don't know. But I'm trying to, encapsulate this story. But one day there was a headline, I believe it was the Washington Post, that said, Orange Band has died because he was the last dusky seaside sparrow of his kind. And they called him Orange Band because of the band that they put on the leg. And Robert goes on to talk about, extinction and what must it feel like to be, he says something, I wish I had the article to read from. It's actually on my website, but, it's like the sound of a hammer on cold steel as the faint echo of a lost species disappears forever. Something like that. And I was like, oh my God, it's just, weeping and weeping. Every time I think about it, I weep. And every time I read it on my website, I weep. And this has been, 30 years? But, I mean, it spoke to me so viscerally. And I was like, that's going to be my record label. It's going to be Orange Band Records. It's going to be Orange Band Records. It's a tribute to this little sparrow, but it's a tribute to the greater picture that, we fight extinction before we too become extinct. And I went to Robert's, I guess it was his agent. I had to track them down. And I said, I'd like to use this name. Is there any conflict of interest here? And I guess that he just gave his approval, and I always, through the years, kept meaning to contact him. And I guess I finally made my mind, I think it was last year, to contact him, and I found out he passed away. And I was like, I don't know if he would have ever taken a call. I think he would have, because he was a writer and, you know, he was a down to earth man. And I saw some of his interviews and I was like, oh, this is a man I need to meet. And, you know, like-minded. He was born on not my same year, but our same day. I mean, he had so many of his essays had so much to say about what I believed, you know, and I was just like, oh, maybe that was a missed opportunity to, you know, don't wait, just plow ahead. You know, you shouldn't, don't just keep putting it off, because now obviously I can't talk to him. But he approved that, and I don't think he ever knew, and I wish he had, because I know he would have loved what I do, because everything is so rooted in, you know, pushing for the environment. What the songs I write have messages, and anyway, so the choice for Orange Band Records, that's the history of it, and it's truly symbolic.
Right, good for you. Thank you for sharing that. How difficult is to, in general terms, right? No, I don't need to know detail, but how difficult is to make a living as a musician of your type of music? I mean, you know, nowadays people don't sell that, they don't buy that many record or CDs or vinyl, or not everybody tours, so it's hard to, I suppose, make a good living in your life of work.
Well, I will say that contrary to that belief, I do very well.
Good for you. Yeah.
I'll say a couple of other things. Certainly, when the physical CD became the, you know, mastodon of the world, it's definitely hard. It's turned things upside down. And I hate streaming. The artists are getting absolutely raped. I mean, you know, organizations like Pandora are making billions of dollars and paying fractions and fractions and fractions of pennies per stream, whereas before you would get, for a download for one title, about 99 cents. Maybe whoever was distributing that got 9 cents off of that. So it's definitely a different playing field. There's no question about that. But again, I started out a long time ago, and I'm a known quantity. And, you know, in an odd sense, because I was already a presence, when I first signed up with digital with a company called CD Baby, I'm sure you are aware of them, but they don't even sell CDs anymore. They only do deals with distribution partners. But when I remember them saying, well, would you like to sign a digital agreement? And I'm like, well, what's that? They said, well, you know, it'll be people streaming your stuff. And they explained it. And I said, well, can't imagine anyone streaming my genre. I mean, isn't this more for pop and rock? They said, well, you never know. And I was like, well, yeah, you never know. So I'll sign up for it. And then, of course, people were streaming, I mean, we're doing digital downloads all the time. And that was very lucrative. But when it went to streaming, that is when the artist got really hit. But there's such a thing as royalties.
Sure.
And again, I've been out there for nearly 3 decades now. And so the royalties are probably the biggest, you know, revenue at this point in time. I am just hoping that, you know, folks on Capitol Hill with ASCAP and Sound Exchange fighting for, you know, intellectual property rights, that they will get the right compensation. I mean, right now it's absolutely ridiculous in this playing field of streaming. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like 0.0000001 for a stream, and you've got maybe 8 million streams. Like, you do the math.
Yeah, you need to have like a million hits to get $10 to buy yourself a cup of coffee. And so, yeah, I'm very aware. That's a ripoff.
Meanwhile, Pandora is running to the bank with all your money,
That's right. Yeah,
without
terrible.
which they wouldn't be able to advertise. You know,
That's right. Yeah, but camp is fair for artists because they only 10%, right? And the other 90% go to the artist. So it's very well run company and
Who
via
does?
band
Bandcamp.
camp.
Yeah, I don't, I'm on it, but it's
don't know
not,
if it-
it's not something I'm real familiar with. And I'm there, but it's not a presence that's working for me at this point.
I got it. Yeah, a lot of artists that I interview they use it, and it's compared to Spotify is very fair actually. And you, as I say, you get 90% of the sale, right? They only take 10%. So
Yeah, no, they are good that way.
Yeah,
I think most of my demographic following,
yeah,
maybe they're not that familiar with it, and that's why they don't go
Sure.
there.
sure.
Maybe the younger folk do, and I only recently kind of connected with them.
Good.
But yeah, they are more lucrative for the artist.
Sure.
But again, I still think it's I think it's a very smaller group. I mean, smaller. I mean, the others reach wider audiences. I think Bandcamp tends to be more musician, like in the musician family.
Yeah, yeah. I use Spotify and I pay like $10 a month or whatever I pay, and I have access to a lot of music. So it's great for me as a research tool because I'm always listening to music. I'm always rediscovering new bands and new group. For you guys, it's terrible because it's a ripoff, right? So I remember that emailing them a couple times. I'm saying, I'm willing to pay more, if that is the delta, right? Where to go to a musician. Of course, they never get back to me. I reach out for an interview and they never get back to me. And because I will ask them difficult questions,
Of course. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they're all for taking the money and not
Of
giving
course,
it back.
that's true. Do you like to, you still play live? Do you like playing live or?
Oh, I love to give concerts. I do. I mean,
Yeah.
the last time I did a West Coast tour in 21,
Yeah.
and a lot of tragic things happened after that. And during that, it was a very, very difficult time to be away. So far from home. I had a very, very, very sick dog that was in a hospital, and I just, 24/7 veterinary surveillance. I didn't want to go. I had already postponed the tour once because of COVID, and I couldn't have taken care of him myself. So I knew he had to be there. So we went. It was so difficult. I mean, I didn't know if I'd have a dog to come home to. It was the worst, one of the worst things I've ever had to do. He was okay. We got through it. I got home. I couldn't wait, but the tour was a nightmare, trying to focus on giving concerts and thinking about him and getting calls twice a day, West Coast time, 3 hours later. So they'd call me at 3:30 in the morning, my time, to tell me that he was okay, he had a good night. That was really hard. And when I got back, I've been going through a lot of health issues of my own, and I had been on, I don't know if you've read up on any of that background of mine, but I've kind of been battling cancer for over 20 years, and I had been diagnosed with leukemia, and I was on a drug, and they kept changing the drug because my body couldn't handle it, and the third drug I was on was causing me enormous problems, and my body was breaking down, and we really didn't know if there was another option. And I didn't know either if I'd even make another album after Love Walks Through Rain, which was in 23.
Yeah.
So I just said, I'm not going to waste my time trying to tour at this point. It's just, I'm done.
Sure.
And then they found a fourth drug for me, and it's been working wonderfully. I've been in a deep molecular remission for just about 2 years. And next month, they want to take me off of it as a trial to see if my numbers stayed really low. Microscopically, almost non-existent. And so we've started to reach out again, for tour dates. And lately, it seems like most presenters are concerned about booking solo piano. And what are you going to do about that? The things that my agent has been coming back to me with is, well, they said they had a solo pianist last year and ticket sales were low, so we're not going to book piano now for a while. And, different things. Oh, but you're welcome to rent the venue. And I've always gotten a guarantee. I've always been put up and treated beautifully and given, hospitality and lodging and all the things that you might expect. And I just am absolutely horrified. So until the playing field changes in that regard, no. But I think the problem is that, again, people are too caught up in needing too much stimuli in front of them, too many bells and whistles. If they're not 25 people on stage gyrating or doing something at any given moment, they're not given into their intellectual, think powers. Like, what does this really mean to me? I need to think about this. What is it touching me? I think people have lost their feel.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. It's tough. It's tough to tour right now, and it's very expensive, and the amount of money that you pay is not what you used to pay, and you end up pretty much losing money, right? Because you need to cover the airfare and the hotel and the expenses and whatever.
The guarantee would cover all of that. The further you have to travel, the greater the guarantee. So if I have to go to the West Coast, the guarantee would be larger. But if it's a local concert, like in the Northeast, if I can drive there, then we can cut the guarantee down. But there's still the lodging, the hospitality, and all of that. So it was never a problem. But this new sort of arena of, no, we're just not selling tickets to solo piano. And the other thing I know is that there are folks out there that are paying for the venues. So the more pianists that are paying for venues are really ruining it for the people who got the guarantees, because you're not getting the same caliber, but if you get it for free, well, hey, let's try it. I really, that's the only explanation I can think of.
Okay. Understand. Your latest album is pretty good, actually. I really like it. So what was the motivation and the title and putting that together and so on and so forth? So feel free to elaborate on that.
All right. Well, I have said so many times that every album of mine is a chapter in my life. It's a pouring out. There's no decision to, I'm going to write about this or I'm going to write about that. It's just simply another page in my life. And I'm always writing. Not every day, but in the continuum of weeks and months, I'm always writing something. And as was the case with Still, I had written about 9 pieces. We have a property up in New York upstate New York on the St. Lawrence River. And I write up there, and I also write in the winters here in Massachusetts. And I did a lot this past winter. That's one of my favorite times to write. Cocooned in the New England blanket of snow. And I had written these pieces, and I was, for the first time, feeling like we were coming to a close to the album. It's just a feeling I get. And I was like, but I don't have a title for this yet. I know I need one more piece because I like to give my fans a certain chunk of time, 45 minutes or more. And I was like, I need one more piece, but I have no idea what the title will be. Where am I with this? Where am I with this? And it was bugging me. And that hasn't happened before. So one evening, my husband and I were getting ready for go out to dinner, and I was having a glass of wine in our kitchen. I was all alone. It was very, very quiet, which is highly unusual because we have 3 dogs, but we had put them in the bedroom with the AC on because it was summertime and the TV on, so they'd be quiet. And I was waiting for my husband, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, oh, this is just so still. It's still. This is still. It's still. So I was like, that's it. That's it. That's the title. And then all the titles that I had written, they just worked beautifully under the umbrella. It was like magic. And then all I had to do was write still, which I did. And it's very different. And my husband said as much. And I said, yeah, but it works, doesn't it? And he said, yes. And I was like, I got it. And just like that.
Good for you. It's a very good album. I was able to listen to the album and some of the old work last night, and I really like it. And my understanding is that the album was produced by Will Ackerman and Don Eaton, right?
Well, actually, I'm the executive producer. Will and I always work on the piano tracks. Tom and I did everything else together. And then Tom mixed and mastered it.
I got it. Yeah, I interviewed Will a couple years ago, actually. And he's a very nice human being. We talked for 3 hours. That has been my longest interview. Because I asked questions, open-ended. He will elaborate on that, and then he elaborate on that.
Will's great. He loves to chat. He'll tell you all sorts of stories. My God, that man has stories. I've been, I think this is my, let me just give me a minute here. I got to figure this out. Done 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think it's my 10th album with him.
Wow. Yeah.
We're working at Imaginary Road. I mean, lately, Will is not as involved in the whole production process. I think he's trying to take a step back and, enjoy just chilling out a little bit more. But I always want him on my piano tracks because when you're in there, you hear what you hear, but you need somebody else saying, oh, that take, that beginning was perfect. And then maybe that middle section, let's do that a second take, and then, you put them together. Or he'll just say, okay, that was fine. Why do you need me? It's fun. But it's always important to have a second set of ears like Will's on that project. And then Tom has a set of ears like I've never met a person with ears like that. I mean, he hears things that I don't think a cricket hears. I mean, it's the mix in the mixes and stuff.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's funny because today is Thursday. On Monday, I thought about Will actually for another reason, because somebody asked me, I interview another person. And what would be the longest interview? And I say Will Ackerman for sure, because I talked to him 3 hours, and I thought about, man, I need to he was not feeling well, I think like a year ago when I sent him, I think his wife a message for Christmas or whatever it was. And he wasn't that well. So I thought this week I need to give him a call or send an email because I'm interested in talking to him again. He's a very nice human being, and of course his music label at the time went uphill. He did very well financially and all that kind of stuff. But he's a very good person, and I wanna talk to him about an idea that I have going on my head this week. So hopefully he will be receptive, right? And I think he lives in I don't know. Is he in New Hampshire or something like that, or
No, he's in Vermont. That's where I go to
Vermont? Oh yeah,
record.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. I never been.
Beautiful spot, beautiful place to record. It's so
Yeah,
lovely, so pastoral, so peaceful,
yeah,
open.
yeah. Good for him. Man. So so the album is the album selling well or
Well, we're only at pre-release. It comes out tomorrow
yeah,
officially.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm not even aware of where it's at, but I think pre-release is going well. I've heard a lot of pre-saves and
yeah,
pre-streams, but again, it's all the pre-phase. It started
right,
April 23rd and tomorrow is the month, and then they go into the official date where they can actually get what they've ordered. And we have
yeah,
ads running and things like that. So it'll be interesting. We're doing a lot of different types of marketing and advertising that we've never done before. I decided to try it. There were things that weren't available before. So we're kind of pulling all the stops out on this and we'll see how it goes.
I got you. I imagine that this is not your last record, right? You plan on
Oh no,
you
I've
plan on
already
releasing
I've
music
already
and
written 6 pieces for the next album.
all right,
And as I said, I always am writing,
yeah,
and I wrote a lot this past winter, and um I already have a name for this album.
the
I
upcoming
already
one,
have what's that?
the upcoming one, the
The upcoming, yes.
yeah,
Unlike still, like it was like almost to the end where it popped in my head, but this time I have it, and I have actually written a goodly portion of my liner notes, and
yeah,
my husband's beautiful photography. I mean, he's my visual director. He does all the liner notes and AV
yeah,
work when I am on the stage, and he he's gotten some beautiful, beautiful shots last fall up in New York. And I was like, oh, we've got to use those in the next album. And we know what's going to be on the cover already, which is unusual. We're not usually this far ahead of the game as we develop an album, but it was just like,
yeah.
bada bing.
Good for you. Good for you. And then, well, hopefully you will do well with the album, and I hope to see you playing live one day. For me, live music is very important. Yeah, I can
Well,
buy a million CDs and buy a record store, but no, I need to listen to this. I
I
buy a
do.
lot of music.
I want to be back on the concert stage. Believe me,
Yeah,
I belong there. But in the event, one reason I did this was in case folks, for whatever reason, disability, age, distance, couldn't see me. I
yeah,
did do a DVD back in 2013 of a live,
yeah,
beautifully filmed, 90-minute, no intermission concert at the
yeah,
beautiful St. George Theater on Staten Island. So you could see me live there.
yeah. Or the other option could be like do like a live streaming and people will pay like a fee and you will play for 90 minutes. I don't know if this is possible.
I'm not, I
People
don't,
would like to do
I'm
that. I
not
don't know if you
set
would
up
like to do that. Yeah.
I'm not set up I don't have a studio where, it would be right. I mean, when I play in a gown, I come in on a stage, I want a
Yeah.
9-foot concert grand Steinway, I mean, that's
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
don't do
I got
that.
you.
Anything else, I'm all or nothing. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's A plus or it's nothing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, okay. No, I understand, but, people, some musicians use it as a sort of, to supplemental income, if you will, right? Every
I
so
don't need
often
it.
they do like, but if case you don't need it, you're good. Yeah. And I will need to probably watch the DVD, I suppose. Unless
There you
you,
go.
unless, unless you eventually will end up playing back, and I will look at your website and say, okay, I will go to Boston and to visit some friends. Well, I go to Boston often, so to visit professors, stuff like that. But I'm working.
Really?
Yeah, I'm working a couple of research projects with a couple of professors of Harvard. So I go to Boston like 3 times a year, I think. Yeah, I'm a
You
teaching
should.
I'm a
You should.
teaching fellow at Harvard actually. So I go there often. So
You should let me know, seriously, because, maybe we could meet for a coffee or something
coffee,
like
that would be
that. Be
great.
fun.
That would be great. I need to get the CD as well from you as well.
Beth hasn't sent this to you yet?
No, no, but no. Of course, I listen to it, but I like physical. For me, I don't. I buy books, right? I buy records. I buy CDs. I don't want to read PDF document or download stuff. No, no, no. I buy a lot of music because I want to support the artist, whether the person needs the fan or doesn't need one, right? So I
Well,
buy a lot.
I feel the same way. I mean, I don't, I want something physical in my
That's right.
hands.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
I read a book, I want to read a book. I don't want a Kindle.
No, of
I
course
want
not. Right.
something I can turn the page and turn
Yeah,
the page back. And then maybe
that's right.
think about what mean.
Yeah,
Well, maybe that was a few pages back. Yeah, there it is. Oh, I get it. All right. Okay. Oh, there's a connection here. You know what I'm saying? I just
sure.
love to be able,
Of
and with the,
course.
boy, here's the liner notes, send me the
Right.
booklet.
Yeah,
I mean, just like the old albums, you pull out everything they have to say. It's the
exactly.
whole package. It's what it means. It's an entity. That's why
Absolutely.
my music is not, you really, I shouldn't say this. I mean, it's not intended to be streamed. It's an
Right.
entity. It flows. It's an experience. It's
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
under an hour long experience. You
Yeah.
listen to the whole thing. If you just get one track, okay, it might be beautiful, but it doesn't give the whole, that circle of just an escape of
Right. Right.
whatever that little fantasy or dreamland that album creates.
Right.
It's in there and it's supposed to be listened as a whole. And that gets me so crazy when again about this streaming on a whole, you know,
Hmm.
uh, artistic level. It's not right.
I completely no. I'm with you. I completely agree with you. Plus, in a book, you can highlight it and make note and go back,
Right,
or
because it's yours.
exactly right. So
If it's in
that,
a
that-
cloud somewhere, it's like, what is that?
that's right. Yeah. My understanding is you write poetry as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Do you plan on writing? I mean, like publish like a book or a poetry book or
I thought about making a sort of compilation of all
yeah,
the poems that are in my CDs and whatnot.
yeah.
Um, I'm not sure that's really a very uh, economical endeavor. They're already out there. I also put most of my liner notes on my website, so they are available to people, and I try to make anything that's digital on my website. If people buy the digital album, they get digital liner notes because it's very important to me, as I've said, to get that part of it. It's the inspiration behind the music, the stories, the poetry. But yeah, the poetry comes and goes as I write it. Sometimes before I write, sometimes when I'm just walking out in nature. I write tributes to my dogs that have passed, and those go in the liner notes. There's always a song or two for them in each album, and again, chapters of my life. But But yeah, I'm very much of a poet. I mean, even as a little girl, I wrote silly little things, and I just, I don't know.
Well, if I end up going to Boston, we'll get together for a cup of coffee or whatever, and then I will give you a couple of poetry books for someone from my country who is, of course, you might know he won the Nobel Prize the Nobel Prize in Literature, Pablo Neruda. In
I don't
19
know the name, but
yeah,
yeah.
I will. You will like it. He was something else. He was a very special human being, right?
And
So,
if it's in Spanish, I probably can read it.
yeah, of course, he's in Spanish or English, whatever. So the guy is well known. His books have been translated into every single language in the world, right?
But with poetry, it's hard because within the language
Right.
is the poetry of that culture.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
it's hard to translate, especially poetry, because
Right.
the rhythm is different. All
Right.
the colors of the wording, everything is different.
Yeah. But it's a good read. Right? I mean, you can read Hemingway in Spanish and English and in Japanese and every language. I suppose that for an English speaking, because he was writing English, right? The case of
Yeah.
Hemingway, doing a translation, though the translation could be very, very good, but it isn't the same. But still, it's very
It's
good.
not the same, but I think the gist comes across, like
The
the
gist,
crux of the
yeah,
story comes
yeah,
across,
yeah,
but not the prosaic way it's been narrated, and not
correct,
in particularly in poetry where everything so much is about color and rhyming and all of that to try and
yeah,
take that from one language to another. I mean,
yeah,
I know three languages, and I've always tried to
good,
know as much about language because I think it defines culture, and the more you know about language and more you know more cultures, and you become more of a, I don't know, a homogeneous grasp about humanity. And so anyway.
Anyway, feel free to mention where the listener of this podcast can buy your music and
Yes, well, they can get it at AnnSweeten.com.
yeah,
And then, of course, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Pandora, Spotify, your favorite streaming platforms,
yeah.
Deezer, Tidal. I don't even know them all, but
Well,
I'm
good for you.
there.
Yeah, but it's better if they go to the website. They can send you an email. They can download
Yes,
the
and I also recommend that if people want to talk to me personally, like they hear the music, they have something to say,
yeah.
to contact me directly at ann@annsweeten.com, because while I'm on social media, it's more of a professional need to be on social media, but for personal stories and any emotional trading, I like to be
Sure. Yeah.
in a private place.
Of
I
course.
don't
Yeah.
want other people to need to see what's going on between
Good.
a fan and
Yeah,
myself.
that's right. I completely understand. It was very nice talking to you. You are an excellent human being. You have been to a lot, but you're still alive, still kicking, and still producing great music. So good for you. It was very nice talking to you. Good luck to you, and say hello to your husband. And hopefully, we'll see one another one day in Boston or something.
Yeah, that would be fun. Well, thank you, Claudio, for having me. And
No problem.
when are you planning to air this? Wasn't sure on that.
It's going to be tomorrow. I will send Beth. I will upload the interview to YouTube tonight, and then I will send Beth tonight a link. So he will share with you. And I have your email address, so I will send you direct link for your social media because the channel is becoming popular. A lot of people are seeing the interviews, and then when I talk to actually Will Ackerman, I will mention as well that
You
we
should,
spoke.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going back there in November, so
All right, good for you. It was very nice talking to you, and good luck to you with the record and the sales and everything.
all
And keep
right,
on
ciao.
working, keep on producing music. Don't give
Oh,
up.
I
Don't
guess I'm not
keep
stopping.
on recording everything. You're very good at what you do. Very nice.
Thank you.
No
Night,
problem.
night. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.